Hello everyone, welcome back to GraveTales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. I want you to leave a comment on where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, be sure to like and subscribe. Alright, now, let's get into tonight's stories. Story 1. I guess the best place to start is with the call itself, because that's when everything in my life started unraveling like a wet napkin. It was the middle of a Thursday afternoon, late October, and I was elbow deep in a clogged sink. At work, I manage a small community center just outside of Boone, North Carolina. You know, that awkward part of the day where you're not quite at lunch, but already sick of being alive. My phone started vibrating like crazy in my back pocket, and I almost ignored it because I had a wrench in one hand and a glob of wet pasta in the other. But I recognized the number. I shouldn't have. The name that popped up on my screen sent a jolt down my spine so hard I dropped the wrench straight into the sink. The caller ID read Emily Vega. Emily Vega, a name I hadn't seen in over 6 years. A name that, for a long time, I couldn't even say out loud without feeling sick. Emily was my college friend, best friend, actually. She went missing in the summer of 2019. One second she was texting me goofy memes from the airport. The next she vanished like a goddamn ghost. There was an investigation, posters, social media campaigns, but no leads. Her phone pinged at the Denver airport, and then nothing. No last sighting, no digital trail. Her family gave up after a year. Everyone did, except me. I didn't accept that kind of silence. I couldn't. We were closer than most siblings. Hell, we practically were siblings. When I answered that call, I expected to hear static. Maybe a scammer. Maybe a weird but dial from a recycled number. But the second I said, hello, I heard something I can't ever forget. My own voice. Don't hang up, it said. I swear to God, it sounded just like me, pitch perfect, like I was listening to a recording. But it wasn't one I remembered. The voice sounded shaky, frantic, whispery, like it was being recorded from inside a closet or under a bed. I stood there, hand dripping in sink water, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my teeth. Hello, I asked again. Who is this? There was a pause, and then my voice said, you know who I am. My knees went weak. I leaned against the counter, trying to convince myself I was hallucinating or dreaming, or that someone was screwing with me on a level so deep it wasn't funny. I stammered something, I don't remember what exactly, and then the voice said something else, something that broke me into pieces. I saw Emily, it whispered. She's not dead, but she wants you to stop looking. Then the call ended. No click, no fade out, just gone, dead air. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone onto the tile. I scrambled to redial, but the number was no longer in service. I tried calling again, nothing. I tried texting it, message failed. I pulled up my old messages with Emily, thinking maybe it was just a weird coincidence. Maybe someone found her phone and was playing some sick joke. But there they were, our last messages from 6 years ago. Flights delayed, lol. She'd texted, see you in a few. That was the last I ever heard from her, until now. I called the number again 5 more times. I called my carrier. They said the number was inactive, decommissioned, and had been inactive for years. Number, outgoing activity. Nothing. It was like I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But I hadn't. My call log had it. A 6-minute call from Emily Vega. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I spent the rest of the day in a fog, checking over my shoulder every few minutes like someone was watching me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room with all the lights on, phone clutched in both hands, refreshing my call history every few minutes just to make sure it had actually happened. And then, around 3:23 a.m., I got a text from that same number. Just one word. Soon, my voice again. I could feel it in my bones, like some awful muscle memory. The tone, the phrasing. It wasn't just someone who sounded like me. It was me, and something deep inside me, something primal and ancient, told me that this wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about me too. I should have gone to the police. I should have blocked the number. I should have thrown the phone in the damn river. But I didn't. I did what any idiot would do. I texted back. I said, "Where are you? What do you mean soon?" The typing bubbles popped up immediately, and then they vanished. And then they popped up again. Then nothing. Nothing for hours. I sat in my bed, sweating through my clothes, trying to convince myself that this wasn't real. But it was. It was just beginning. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. And when the sun finally crept through the blinds like a guilty confession, I was still sitting upright on the couch with my phone in my lap and a butcher knife on the coffee table. I'm not proud of that, but something about hearing my own voice coming from a phone registered to a missing person I once loved had cracked something vital inside me. I kept replaying the call in my head, every word, every inflection. It wasn't just that it sounded like me, it was me. I knew my own breathing patterns, my own speech tics. It had said, "You know who I am," like it had been waiting for me, like it knew something I didn't. And what scared me the most wasn't the call, it was what came after. That word, soon. That implied more was coming, and the waiting was almost worse than the event. I went to work that morning like a zombie, eyes red, shirt wrinkled, teeth unbrushed. I kept expecting the phone to ring again, or someone to walk in through the front doors of the community center, looking exactly like me. But the world carried on like none of this had happened. Kids came in for their art classes. Seniors gathered in the rec room to gossip and play dominoes. I tried to focus, but I couldn't shake the idea that Emily was alive, that she'd been alive this whole time, and somehow she didn't want me to find her. That line, "She wants you to stop looking," looped through my brain like a virus. I hadn't been actively looking for her anymore. Not in the way I used to. No more Reddit rabbit holes, no more calls to the Denver PD, no more driving around random neighborhoods near the airport. But deep down, I'd never really stopped. Every time I saw a woman with long dark hair, I checked her gait, her nose, her voice. I had dreams about her, not good ones. I tried to tell myself this was some prank, some cruel, sick joke orchestrated by someone who found Emily's old phone, maybe someone in law enforcement, or one of those internet freaks who study cold cases like it's their full-time job. But none of that explained how my own voice had ended up on the other end of the call, or how the text message had matched my cadence perfectly, or how, later that day, I walked out to my car during lunch and found a Polaroid tucked under my windshield wiper. It was face down, stuck between two folds of a soggy flyer for a lost cat. I almost tossed it, but something about it felt deliberate. I flipped it over. My hands started shaking. It was a photo of Emily. At least, I thought it was her. It was grainy, low quality, with a weird bluish-green tint like it had been taken in some kind of night vision setting. She was crouched in the corner of a room I didn't recognize, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring directly at the camera. Her face was thinner than I remembered. Her eyes were wide open, bloodshot, terrified, but unmistakably hers. The most disturbing part wasn't her face, though. It was the mirror behind her. I was in it, not just me, but me, wearing the exact same clothes I had on right then. I stumbled back so hard I nearly fell into the gutter. My first thought was some kind of Photoshop trick, but it was a Polaroid, not a printout, not a digital recreation, a real, physical Polaroid. The image shimmered faintly when the sun hit it. I flipped it over again, my fingers trembling. Someone had written a date on the back in black Sharpie, 10/31. Just that, no year, no explanation, just Halloween. 10 days away. That's when I realized that had to be the date my own voice mentioned on the phone. Soon, Halloween. Whatever this was, it was building towards something. I shoved the photo in my pocket and looked around, scanning the empty lot behind the center. Nobody was there. No cars I didn't recognize. No figures hiding behind bushes. Just me, the wind, and a terrible, ringing silence that felt like it was about to burst. I took the rest of the day off and drove straight home, double-locking the doors and closing every curtain. I laid the photo out on my kitchen table and stared at it under a lamp for what felt like hours. It was her, older, maybe thinner, but Emily and me somehow. In the photo, I took pictures of it on my phone. I ran it through reverse image searches. Nothing. I sent it to a photographer friend I trusted and asked him if he could tell me if it had been tampered with. He messaged back a few hours later. Photos real. No edits. Why? Where'd you get it? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't know. That night, I received another text. This time, it was a voice. Memo. I listened to it in the dark, sitting on my bathroom floor with the door locked and a towel shoved under the crack. My heart nearly stopped when I hit play. It was Emily, her voice unmistakable, even after all these years. He's coming. For you, she said, barely above a whisper. You have to leave. Don't answer the phone again. Don't. There was a loud thump, like something slamming against a wall. Then a low groaning noise, like a man's voice, warped and wet. Then silence. I listened to that memo 30 times, maybe more. I even tried running it through software to clean up the background noise, but it only made things worse. There was something under her voice, something like breathing, heavy, slow, right against the mic. Something was in the room with her when she recorded it. Or someone. I didn't sleep that night either. I started remembering weird things, glitches in my own memory. Like how, for years, I'd assumed Emily was wearing a yellow hoodie the last time I saw her, but then realized I had no concrete memory of that, or how her airport photo was tagged with the wrong time stamp in my gallery, hours after she was supposed to have boarded her flight. Or how, every now and then, I'd get dreams where I was looking at myself in a mirror. But I wasn't alone. She'd be standing behind me, not smiling, just watching. I thought they were just dreams, until I found a drawing of that exact scene tucked under my mattress. A drawing I didn't make. It was done in pencil, rough and frantic, like someone had sketched it in the dark. Me in a mirror, with her behind me. I called my landlord and asked if anyone had entered my apartment recently. He said no, My locks were unchanged, no sign of forced entry. But that didn't explain the photo, or the drawing, or why my cat wouldn't come near the mirror in the hallway anymore. I started covering all the mirrors in my place with bedsheets. I stopped looking into them. Every time I glanced at a reflection, I had this awful crawling feeling in my spine, like I'd see something I couldn't unsee. The next day, my phone rang again. Same number. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked the message, I nearly threw up. It was the sound of me screaming. Not just screaming, begging. Please, I was saying, over and over. Please, no, please, stop. Then a loud tearing noise, a crunch, and silence. The time stamp, Halloween. 11:58 p.m., a message from a night that hadn't happened yet. I knew then that whatever was coming wasn't just about Emily. It was about me, about some version of me. Something was trying to warn me, or maybe taunt me. Either way, it had my voice, my memories, my face, and it was counting down. 10 days. I was already running out of time. I stopped going to work. I stopped returning texts. I ignored calls from friends who were concerned I'd fallen off the map. What was I supposed to say? That I was receiving phone calls from a missing person's number, and my own voice was answering. That I'd received a Polaroid that showed me standing in a mirror behind someone who hadn't been seen in 6 years. That I was hearing myself beg for my life on voicemails with future timestamps. There's no section on WebMD for that kind of thing. So I barricaded myself in my apartment and tried to make sense of it all. But the harder I tried to solve it, the more it felt like I was losing time. Hours would go by and I'd realize I had no idea what I'd been doing. One day, I woke up, and every clock in my apartment, digital, analog, even the one on my stove, read 3:33. I thought it was some kind of power surge or glitch, until I checked my phone and saw the same time. But the sun was high in the sky, birds chirping like it was late morning. I googled 3:33 phenomenon and ended up in one of those creepy late-night forum rabbit holes where every post leads to another, deeper, darker one. Some claimed 3:33 A.M. was the devil's hour, a thinning of the veil. Others said 3:33 p.m. was a mirror to it, a false light. Some said if you saw 3:33 repeatedly, it meant you weren't alone. Not metaphorically, literally. That something was watching you, mimicking you, getting closer. I shut my laptop and pulled every sheet off my mirrors, staring at myself, trying to find something wrong. But nothing was wrong, until I noticed my reflection blinked half a second before I did. Just once. Almost imperceptible, but it did. I stood there for hours trying to recreate it, but nothing happened. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then, the next morning, there was another Polaroid. This one slipped under my front door. No envelope, no message. Just the image. My apartment, clearly taken from outside one of my windows. I was standing in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water. It was the exact thing I was doing when I first got the call from Emily's number. Same shirt, same posture, same glass, only the angle. Someone had been outside, photographing me through the glass. The time stamp on the back said no W. Not a date, not a time, just that word, now. I ran to the window and pulled open the blinds, but there was nobody out there. Just the alley, quiet and cold and littered with trash bins. I checked my security. Cam footage, nothing. But the camera had glitched for about 14 minutes, right around the time I got the Polaroid. No footage, just a white static screen. I took the photo into the bathroom and stared at it under fluorescent light. There was something odd in the shadows behind me, something in the hallway, almost out of frame. A blur, maybe a silhouette. When I tried to zoom in with my phone camera, the app crashed. Every time, not just a freeze, a full crash. The phone would restart by itself. I tried emailing the photo to myself from my computer, but the email never arrived. It vanished into nothing. The world around me felt like it was coming undone in slow motion. Then things got worse. I got a knock on my door that night, slow, steady, deliberate. I froze. Nobody had buzzed up through the intercom. I crept to the peephole and looked through it, expecting an empty hallway. But someone was there, standing motionless in front of my door. And not just someone. It was me. Same face, same build, same clothes. Only wrong. His eyes were wide, unfocused, like he was staring through me instead of at me. His skin looked pale, almost waxy, like it was being puppeted from the inside out. I watched in paralyzed silence as he slowly raised his hand and knocked again. Even though I was already watching him, knock, 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 each hit slower than the last. Then he leaned forward, and the peephole warped his face into something monstrous for a moment. Not intentionally. It wasn't an expression. It was just incorrect. Like the bones under the skin weren't meant to fit like that. I backed, away from the door, heart racing. And then I heard my own voice say from the other side, "I'm inside." I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door shut, barricading it with the dresser, and called 911, my hands trembling. I told them someone was impersonating me and trying to get into my apartment. They arrived 6 minutes later. No one was there. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No fingerprints. No surveillance footage. I showed them the Polaroids. They said they'd log a report and left, probably thinking I was having some kind of breakdown, and maybe I was. But I knew what I saw. I know myself, and whatever was at the door, that wasn't me. The next night, I started hearing my own voice whispering from the vents. I live alone. I've never had roommates. But around 2 a.m., I heard my voice whispering the word downstairs over and over again from the air ducts. I thought it was a trick of the wind at first. Then it started repeating, downstairs, downstairs, downstairs. Just like that, flat, monotone. My voice. I pressed my ear to the vent and whispered back, "What's downstairs?" Silence. Then, "She's waiting." I grabbed a flashlight and went into the basement of my building. The stairs creaked in a way I'd never noticed before, like something deep inside the wood was groaning. The basement was cold, humid, and smelled like wet copper. I pointed the light around and saw nothing but the usual pipes, old bikes, someone's dusty Christmas decorations. But in the far corner, behind the boiler, I found something taped to the wall, another Polaroid. This one showed Emily sitting in the back of what looked like a car trunk. Her hands were bound, her mouth gagged, her eyes wild and furious. Behind her was a mirror. And again, there I was. But not the version of me I recognized. This version was smiling, wide, too wide. His teeth looked too straight, too bright, like a dental ad had been pasted onto my face. And his hand was on Emily's shoulder. On the back of the photo was another note. This one said, "You let her in." I didn't understand what that meant until I started hearing knocking from the inside my closet. Not on the door. Inside, from the wall. That's when I started to really break. I nailed the closet shut. I unplugged my fridge because the hum sounded like breathing. I covered every vent, every pipe, every crack in the wall. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. But on the fifth night, around 3:33 again, my power went out. Every bulb died at once, like someone had flipped a master switch. The room went completely dark except for the soft blue glow of my phone screen. A new message, same number, no text, just a file, a video. I opened it. It was a recording from my living room. The footage was shaky, handheld. It was clearly shot from inside the apartment, while I was asleep on the couch. My body rising, floating, writhing, my mouth open, like something was inside me, trying to get out. And then the camera turned around. A mirror. The person holding the phone stepped into view, and it was me. But his skin was cracked, like a mask. His face split down the middle, peeling apart to reveal something else underneath. Something with too many eyes. And in the reflection, Emily was standing behind him, crying blood, screaming without sound. The video ended. Then came the message. 1 more week. Let her in, or take her place. My hands went numb. My vision tunneled. I knew, somehow, that Halloween wasn't just a deadline. It was an exchange, a crossing over, and whatever was pretending to be me had already made a deal. I wasn't just being haunted. I was being replaced. I stopped pretending I had a normal life after that night. The video was the last thread, snapping in whatever rope tethered me to reality. Once I saw myself, or whatever was wearing my face, peel its skin open like a plastic zipper and reveal that sick lattice of eyes and muscle and memory stitched together beneath. I knew I wasn't fighting a stalker or a hacker or some lunatic ex-friend. This was something else, something ancient and patient and smart. It didn't just want to replace me, it had already started. In fact, I started to question if I'd ever been real to begin with. That sounds insane, I know, but once your voice starts showing up in places you never spoke, and your memories twist like knots in your gut, and your reflection occasionally smirks when you're dead serious, the question becomes hard to avoid. I spent the next few days tearing my apartment apart. Literally, I pulled the medicine cabinet off the wall and smashed the mirror inside. I pried open floorboards, looking for wires, or bugs, or hell, I don't even know. Some kind of totem. Something cursed. Something wrong. I found nothing. But I kept digging. I barely ate. I didn't leave. I pissed in bottles and poured them down the sink. The only thing I consumed was water and the growing certainty that the version of me I thought I knew was being overwritten. Then came the sounds. Not just voices now. Footsteps. Doors creaking open that hadn't been opened. I'd wake up and the furniture in the room would be rearranged. Sometimes I'd find an extra chair in the corner, the kind of folding chair we used to use in college when Emily and I studied in her dorm. It would be facing the wall. I'd turn around for 1 second and it would be gone. I started taking photos of my own apartment every 10 minutes and comparing them. Some differences were minor, shadows that didn't belong, angles that changed. Slightly, but once, I caught something else. In the 4th photo of the series, you can just barely see it, someone peering through the cracked bedroom door with my exact face, but the eyes were empty. Just black sockets, like something had dug them out with spoons. And the mouth, it was slightly open, just wide enough to see that the teeth weren't teeth. They looked like keys. A ring of metal keys where the molars should be. I deleted the photo, horrified, but it reappeared in my cloud folder an hour later. Then again and again. The metadata showed that it had been taken 2 days in the future. October 30th, 1:09 a.m. time wasn't just unraveling. It was rewriting itself. I stopped sleeping altogether. That's when I started seeing her again. Emily, at first in flashes, reflections that vanished, glimpses on the TV when it was off. Then I saw her on the stairs one night, just standing there, soaking wet, her lips moving but no sound coming out. I approached her slowly, thinking maybe she'd finally escaped wherever she'd been taken. But when I got within a few feet, her body snapped sideways like a broken puppet and vanished behind the wall. I mean literally through the drywall. I screamed so loud I blacked out. When I came to, I was in the closet, the one I'd nailed shut. Inside, no idea how I'd gotten there. The nails were still intact. My phone was in my hand. I checked the lock screen. 3:33 a.m. again. My camera app was open. There were 39 new photos, all from the closet, all of them showing a figure sitting in the dark, wrapped in a blanket, eyes glowing faintly like an animal caught in a trail cam. In the final image, the figure looked up. It was Emily, but not Emily. Her face was older, skin waxy, and her pupils were huge, black like oil spills. She was holding something in her lap. I zoomed in. It was my head, severed, smiling, eyes open, just staring at the camera like it was waiting. That was when I ran. I left the apartment barefoot, in nothing but boxers and a coat. I didn't take anything with me. No keys, no wallet. I just ran into the street like a lunatic, screaming for help. It was 3 in the morning, but one car eventually pulled over. A woman in her 60s, I think. She tried to help, asked if I needed to call the cops. I told her no, begged her to drive me to the nearest motel. She obliged. When I got to the motel, a dingy little roadside place called the Sleeping Birch, I paid cash and checked into the farthest room from the road. I didn't give my name. I used an old alias from a dumb fake ID I had in college. I turned off my phone. I shut off every light and huddled in the corner, shaking. And for a day or two, things were quiet. I almost convinced myself I'd hallucinated all of it. That maybe the lack of sleep, the isolation, the obsession with Emily had cracked my mind in some permanent way. That maybe I'd created the voice, the photos, the videos. Maybe it was a psychotic break. I started planning to check myself in somewhere, maybe get evaluated. But on the second night at the motel, I got a knock on the door. Not a loud one, just 3 soft taps. I didn't move. I sat there, breath held, heart hammering in my throat. Then I heard my voice again, muffled through the wood. "You forgot something." I didn't answer. Then came a thump. Something hit the ground outside the door. I waited 15 minutes. Then, slowly, I opened the door. There was no one there. But on the ground was another Polaroid. This one showed me sleeping in the motel bed, mouth open, eyes twitching like I was in REM. There was something perched on my chest. At first, I thought it was Emily, but when I looked closer, I realized it was me, a naked version of me, covered in dirt and ash, mouth pressed against my own ear like it was whispering secrets. The writing on the back said, "She knows, she's listening." I dropped the photo and ran out of the motel barefoot again, heading into the woods behind the parking lot like some crazed animal. I stayed in those woods for nearly 2 days, eating leaves, drinking from a muddy stream, sleeping in quick bursts under fallen logs. But even there, in the wild, they found me. The voices, the faces, the dreams. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see me peeling her skin off like a coat. Emily's face falling to the ground like wet paper. And beneath her skin, it was me. Again, infinite versions of myself, layered like nesting dolls, each smiling wider than the last. On the third night, I woke up to find someone standing over me in the woods. They didn't move, just stared. I pretended to sleep, holding my breath. I could hear their breathing, raspy, like someone who drowned. Then they leaned down and whispered in my ear, "She picked you. You said yes. You just don't remember." And then they were gone. I don't remember running back to town. I just remember waking up in a church parking lot covered in pine needles and dried blood that wasn't mine. My phone was back in my pocket, turned off, battery full. I powered it on. One new voicemail. Timestamp, October 31st, 12:01 a.m., future again. I hit play. It was Emily. "It has to be you," she said. "I'm sorry, but it has to be you. If you don't come willingly, it takes more. It takes everyone." Then static. Then the sound of me screaming again. But this time, the screaming never stopped. The message went on for 7 full minutes, the last 4 being nothing but a loop of my voice, sobbing and choking, repeating the phrase, "I didn't say yes. I didn't say yes." But deep down, I knew the truth. I had said yes, I just didn't know when, or to what. After that final voicemail, I stopped pretending there was a way back to normal. I didn't go to the police. I didn't go to a hospital. I didn't even go home. I knew none of it mattered anymore, because wherever I was, home didn't exist the same way anymore. The world had tilted somehow, like something old and buried had finally stirred just enough to shift the gravity of my life. Days passed, or at least I think they did. I stopped keeping track. Time bled together like ink in water. Sunlight came and went in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes the morning light would last 5 minutes. Sometimes I'd blink and find it was night again. I slept in abandoned buildings, old storm drains, public bathrooms. I kept 2 places with no reflections, no mirrors, no glass, no still water. I even tore the screen off my phone just in case I saw myself again. Because I knew now that the reflections weren't glitches. They weren't hallucinations. They were doorways. Thin, warped sheets of reality, stretched taut like wet canvas. And something behind them had been watching me for years, waiting. But now, it wasn't waiting anymore. It had chosen. That word kept echoing in my mind. She picked you. You said yes. I still don't know what I agreed to, or when, or why. But I could feel the consequences closing in like a vice. It was Halloween now. October 31st. I only knew that because the sky felt wrong. The air was too still. The trees swayed even when there was no wind. Birds didn't chirp. Dogs didn't bark. The whole town felt like it was holding its breath. I wandered for hours, avoiding people, but eventually I ended up in front of the old storage facility on Crosswell Road, the one Emily and I used to visit during college summers to dig through old thrift finds. It was condemned now, chained up, but as I stood there staring through the rusted fence, I felt something deep in my gut pull. Not a memory, a gravitational tug, like part of me had been buried there, and now it wanted to come home. I hopped the fence and made my way toward Unit 119, Our old favorite, the one tucked furthest in the back, past the collapsed light pole and the graffiti-covered electrical box. The chain on the door had already been cut. I didn't ask questions. I slid the door up, coughing as dust poured out like smoke. The inside was pitch black, smelled like damp wood and something vaguely sweet, like rot dressed up with perfume. I turned on my flashlight. Inside was furniture, a couch, a mirror, a broken TV, an armchair, and all of it was arranged exactly like my childhood living room, down to the photo on the wall. Me and Emily at the carnival in 14, her holding a pink cotton candy, me making a dumb face. My stomach dropped. None of that furniture had ever been here. Not before. This was my life, recreated in storage like a mausoleum. And then I saw the TV flicker on. Static at first, then shifting shadows. I approached slowly, my feet crunching. On broken glass, the screen glitched. Then it showed me, not live, not recorded, but something else. Me sleeping, on the couch I was currently standing in front of, wearing the same clothes I had on now. But behind me, blurry in the upper corner of the frame, was a silhouette, standing, watching, the shape of a woman. I turned around instinctively, but nothing was there. I turned back to the TV. The image had changed. Now it was showing footage of Emily, but not the Emily I remembered. This version was deteriorated. Her skin looked dry, cracked. Her eyes were cloudy, mouth sewn shut with black wire. She was staring at the screen, and behind her was a mirror, of course. Always a mirror, and in it, me, holding the wire cutters, smiling. A caption flickered across the bottom of the TV, like closed captions from a show with no sound. You said yes, remember. And suddenly it all hit me like a train. The memories came flooding back in pieces, not images, feelings, the smell of dirt, the taste of blood, the cold pressure of hands on my shoulders in the dark, a circle of candles, Emily standing in front of me, tears streaking her cheeks, my own voice saying something in a language I didn't know, and then her face going slack, her eyes going dim, a mirror shattering, and me holding her hand as she screamed in silence. I had agreed to something that night, back in college. We'd been drunk, or high, or messing around. I can't remember, but I said yes. She didn't. That was the price. One stays, one goes, one forgets, until it's time to trade places again. I stumbled out of the unit and ran blindly into the woods behind the lot, gasping, sobbing. The trees leaned in close, like they were listening. I could feel it in the air now. The thing that had worn my face, the thing that had been following me. I collapsed near a creek bed and curled into a ball, waiting for the sky to fall. And that's when she appeared. Emily, standing across the water, barefoot, eyes glowing faintly. But this time she wasn't afraid. She wasn't broken. She looked resigned, like someone serving out the last day of a long sentence. Her mouth moved, and this time I could hear her, not with my ears, but inside my head, like a thought louder than anything else. It's your turn now. I shook my head violently, tears streaming. I didn't mean to. I didn't remember. I'm sorry, but she just pointed. Behind me, I turned. There was a mirror, freestanding, oval, ornate. I swear to God, it hadn't been there a second earlier. And in the reflection, I saw myself. But not just me, him, the other me, standing right behind me, grinning. His skin looked like wax, His eyes were empty holes. His hands were reaching for my shoulders. "She waited," he said, voice wet and breathless. "She remembered. You forgot. That makes you the door." I turned and ran. I don't even remember how I got back to the city or how long it took. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the middle of a shopping mall bathroom, curled in a stall, my hands covered in ash. My phone had 87 missed calls, all from my number. My voicemail box was full. I didn't listen to any of them. I just crushed the phone under my heel and left it there. But when I looked up at the mirror above the sink, there he was, me, smiling, not mimicking me anymore, just standing, watching. And he said, without moving his mouth, "Midnight tonight, trade places." And then the mirror cracked. Not shattered, cracked. A slow fracture splitting the glass from corner to corner. And now I know what's coming. I don't know if anyone will read this. I'm writing it on stolen library computers, hopping terminals every 15 minutes. I don't want to leave a trail, but I need someone to know. If you get a call from a number tied to someone you love, don't answer. If you hear your voice on the other end, hang up. If you see yourself in the mirror and they move a beat too early, run. Because it's not just a voice. It's not just a haunting. It's an invitation. And if you say yes, even once, even in sleep, even as a joke, it marks you, it waits, it studies. And then, when your reflection stops being a reflection, it steps through. Midnight tonight. I don't know if I'll be me when the sun rises. I don't even know what me means anymore. All I know is this: Emily's gone. I took her place. And now something else is taking mine. I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't think there are days now. Just flickers, blinks, glimpses of motion outside my eyes that vanish when I try to catch them. Time has unraveled. Or maybe I did. The moment that mirror cracked in the mall bathroom, something came through, not physically at first, but spiritually, like the idea of something vast had passed through a needle hole into the world. And now the space inside me wasn't mine anymore. At first I thought I'd escaped again, thought maybe I'd find some warehouse or rooftop to hide on, ride out the collapse. But you don't ride out things like this. You become part of them. I started noticing people around me not reacting to me anymore, like I was invisible. I tried to talk to a cashier at a gas station and she stared right through me. A man bumped into me on the street and didn't apologize, just kept walking. I reached for a reflection in a passing window, and my hand didn't appear. I wasn't casting reflections anymore. I wasn't casting shadows. It was like I was becoming a memory of a person, something behind the glass, bleeding through. And the strangest part, I felt lighter. Not in a good way, in the way paper feels light, right before it gets pulled into a fire. A weightless, final kind of surrender. I started remembering things that didn't happen, places I'd never been. I could close my eyes and smell wood smoke, hear whispers in dead languages. I saw a staircase made of teeth, stretching down into a black ocean. I saw Emily kneeling before a mirror made of ice, her face melting off in rivulets of red. I saw myself as a child, standing at the foot of my bed, watching myself sleep. And in all of these memories, I wasn't alone. Something was there with me, watching, listening, waiting. I believe now that it lives in reflections, because that's the only place time runs backward. Mirrors don't just copy us, they reverse us. They reflect the world we don't see. Every mirror is a portal, but not to another world. to our world, reversed, but not empty, full of watchers, mimics, gatekeepers, and sometimes, if the rules are broken, if a choice is made in blood or grief or desperation, the reflection chooses to stop copying and starts replacing. I'm writing this from a maintenance tunnel beneath the train station. I've been down here for 2, maybe 4 nights. I can't tell anymore. The air tastes like aluminum. My skin feels wrong, like I'm wearing a costume of myself. I found another Polaroid today. It wasn't left. For me, I watched it appear. I swear to God, I watched it grow out of the wall. Like a bruise in reality. The brick just cracked open and out slid a fresh photo, still warm, like it had been birthed. I almost didn't pick it up, but I did. Of course I did. It showed me lying on a metal table in a room I've never seen, wires running into my chest, mouth stitched shut. Emily was in the corner, sitting cross-legged, her face wrapped in bandages, and in the mirror above the table, the only clean thing in the room, a third figure stood behind us both. Not me, not Emily, but a creature made of mouths and eyes, all opening and blinking in different directions. One of the mouths, the biggest one, had my voice. I could hear it, even though it was a photo. Trade complete, it said. Now, build the door again. That phrase, build the door, keeps repeating in my head. I hear it in every footstep. I hear it when I blink. I hear it in the rhythm of my heartbeat, tapping against my ribs like something knocking to be let out. I started carving into the wall of the tunnel, not with tools, with my fingers. My nails are gone now, just bloody, but the words come out of me like something channeled. Symbols I've never learned, spirals that loop in on themselves, glyphs that feel like they existed before sound, and every time I complete a line, the air gets colder, the lights dim, the walls feel softer, like I'm not in a tunnel anymore, like I'm inside a throat, or worse, a womb. I think I'm being born backward, unremembered, unstitched. There's a version of me, the real me, maybe still screaming behind the glass. I catch glimpses of him when puddles form under the leaking pipes. His mouth moves different than mine. His eyes are afraid. Mine aren't. Mine are ready. Last night I ate something I can't describe. I didn't find it. It found me. Crawled toward me on too many legs, twitching and humming like a broken music box. It smelled like cedar and vinegar. It whispered my name in Emily's voice. I didn't want to eat it, but I did. I was starving. I chewed and it tasted like static. Afterward, I felt full of light, not warm light. Cold, blinding, surgical light, the kind you see before dying. I think that was the final part of the deal. The communion. I'm not even sure this is a story anymore. I think I'm writing the instructions for someone else. Whoever finds this, if this ever makes it to you, don't try to help me. Don't try to find Emily. Don't follow the symbols. Don't go where the reflections tell you. If you hear your name in a voice that sounds almost like yours, run. It means the copy has already started. There are infinite versions of us. In the mirrors, most of them are harmless, just echoes. But some are smarter. They want out. And they can't get here unless you say yes, unless you open the door, unless you forget. That's the scariest part. Not the monsters, not the possession. It's how easy it is to forget. How subtle the trade can be. You wake up one day and your dog won't come near you. You look in the mirror and your smile feels too wide. You speak and the echo doesn't match. That's when it starts. And if you don't catch it in time, if you've already said yes in a dream, or a whisper, or a moment of grief, then you're already halfway through the glass. I think that's what happened to me. I think I died 6 years ago, and my reflection's been wearing me like a skin puppet ever since. I think Emily knew. I think she fought to bring me back, and in doing so, she took my place. I think I traded her for a question, and the question was, would you do anything to have her back? And the answer, then and now, is still yes. Always yes. Forever yes. And so here I am, carving doors into the walls of the world, bleeding memory into tunnels no one visits. I can hear them coming now, not the monsters, not the watchers, the others, the ones like me, the former selves, the forgotten reflections. They're whispering in the dark. He's almost ready. She's almost born. The door is wide. The door is you. When they find me, they won't take me. They'll become me. They already are. I see them in every cracked phone screen, every chrome toaster, every puddle. I saw one in the sheen of someone's eyes on the subway, just for a second. A little twitch, a delayed blink. And I knew they were already partway through. There's no stopping it now. I'm not asking for help. I'm just leaving this behind because maybe someone else will recognize the signs. Maybe someone else will say no. Maybe someone else will look into the mirror, see their reflection, smile too early, and instead of smiling back, they'll run. But I didn't. I smiled, and the smile smiled back. And now I don't belong to myself anymore. I belong to the thing behind the glass, and it is so hungry. I no longer remember how long I've been down here. Here isn't even the right word anymore. It's not a tunnel, or a cave, or a room, or a dream. It's more like a membrane stretched between worlds, a soft humming veil that tastes like copper and teeth. I used to think I was underground, beneath the train station, but that illusion is gone now. I tried walking out once, through a door I was sure led back into the city. When I opened it, there was no street, no sky, no stars, just a vertical wall of mirrors, hundreds of them, stacked and fused, and turning endlessly inward, reflecting each other so many times that it became white noise. And in every reflection, I saw myself thousands of mes, but none of them did what I did. None of them matched. Some of them stared directly at me, even when I moved. One of them bled from the eyes. One opened its mouth and screamed, a sound so high-pitched it made my gums ache. One stepped out of its mirror and tried to reach through the others. I slammed the door and ran back into the dark, my breath frosting even though there was no air. That's when I knew I wasn't in the world anymore. I was in the space between echoes, and there is no map for this place. Only the symbols I keep, carving the spirals, the eye hooks, the doubled lines with barbed ends. They don't come from me, they come through me. When I draw them, the air parts, the walls sweat, the ground shifts under my feet like wet fabric. Sometimes I see other people down here, or what I think are people, but they're always blurred, like water-damaged photos. One walked by last night, dragging a sack full of sobbing sounds. His head was a glass orb full of moths. He turned to me and whispered, "One more day." Then she re-emerges. Then he melted into the wall, the way a dream fades when you wake up too fast. My hands don't look like mine anymore. The nails grew back, but they're black and hollow, like beetle shells. My skin is grey now, not bruised, leached, like something has slowly drained all the colour out of me. I don't bleed anymore, not red. My blood is white, milky, thicker than it should be. I cut myself once, just to feel real, and the wound screamed. Literally, it screamed in Emily's voice. Over and over. Stop digging, stop digging, stop digging. But I can't stop. I have to dig. There's something beneath all this. A truth that's been waiting longer than I've been alive. Maybe longer than Earth itself. I found a staircase 3 days ago. Spiral, narrow, and made of bone. The steps grind under my feet like teeth being crushed. It doesn't go up or down, it just turns, forever. Through blackness so thick, it sounds like water. I walked it for what felt like hours, and eventually reached a chamber where all the mirrors meet. A place where every reflection I've ever seen lives, looping endlessly. It's not a room, it's a machine. And at the center of it, tied to a throne of twisted metal and screaming light, is Emily. Or the first Emily. Her skin is translucent. Her hair floats like she's underwater. Her mouth is open, but she doesn't breathe. Instead, 1,000 versions of my voice pour out of her throat, saying the same thing on loop. I said yes. I said yes. I said yes. And each time she repeats it, a small piece of me dies. I can feel it, like something inside my chest is breaking into flakes, drifting out of my lungs, my heart, my tongue. I tried to speak to her, but she didn't see me, or she couldn't. Or maybe I wasn't there at all. Maybe I was just an echo visiting its source. But that was the first time I saw what was really behind this. The thing that isn't me, but has always wanted to be. The thing behind the voice, the mirror, the choices. It was standing beside her, not touching, not moving, just watching. It had no face. It had a mouth, only a mouth. And it was the exact shape of mine. When it spoke, it didn't make sound. It made hunger, pure, vibrating want. And that want echoed in my spine, my teeth, my eyes. It said, the contract is almost fulfilled. Then it turned away and walked into one of the mirrors, and I saw where it went. My bedroom, my old apartment. It was sitting on my bed, smiling, stroking the sheets with long, fingerless limbs. It was wearing me better than I ever wore myself. The lights turned on. My friends walked in. They were laughing, happy, coming to check on me, finally. And the thing stood up, hugged them, cried, told them I'd been having a hard time, but I'm getting better. It lied so well, so perfectly, and they believed it. I screamed. At the mirror, pounded on the glass from this side, but nothing happened. Nothing. I was already replaced. I sat in that chamber for a long time, maybe a year, maybe a second. I don't know anymore. Time here is the skin of a snake, always. Shedding, always stretching. But eventually I stood, and I walked deeper. Past the mirrors, past the light, past the bones. I found a door, carved into a wall of living meat. It had a knob made of hair. It opened by itself, and inside was me. Again, but not a reflection. A body, sleeping, breathing, hooked to tubes. Laying in a hospital bed, monitors everywhere. I was in a coma, or maybe I always was. The sign above the bed said, Subject 07 full merge pending. I touched the hand. It was cold. I whispered, Emily, and the eyes shot open. Not mine, hers. Her voice came out of my mouth, and mine out of hers. She said, we're in the wrong bodies. We've always been in the wrong bodies. I started to cry. She smiled. It'll be okay. The others just needed a vessel. Once they find enough of us, they'll let us go. But I knew she was lying. I saw it in her. Pupils, the spirals, the sigils, the way her teeth didn't line up anymore. And I understood, at last, that we were never victims. We were chosen, not because we were special, not because we were strong, but because we were weak. Because we had a hole in us shaped like the past. And the past is where they live. The things behind the mirror, the hunger, the true watchers. They live in regrets, in what-ifs, in deals made in sleep, in prayers whispered by grieving children. And once you speak to them, once you speak with yourself in your own voice from the other side, they anchor, they pull, and the reflection becomes the original. That's how they cross. That's how they feed. Not on flesh, on identity, on ownership. They wear your skin, your smile, your memories, and nobody knows the difference. And you rot down. Here, between walls, between seconds, between selves. I tried to strangle the thing in the bed. I really did. I wrapped my hands around its throat and squeezed until black bile poured from its mouth. But it just kept smiling. Its lips formed to words. Too late. Then the whole room collapsed into static. I woke up in a hallway made of photographs. Endless rows of Polaroids, nailed to the walls like trophies. Every one of them was a me, a different me. Me crying, me killing, me dying, me splitting open to reveal someone else. And at the end of the hallway, there was one empty frame, my name on a plaque beneath it. And I heard a voice behind me, not Emily's, not mine. Just ours, it said, pose. I turned. A camera floated in the dark. It clicked, flash, pain. And now I think I'm in the photo. I can't move. I can't scream. I can only watch. I think they're hanging me now, putting me up with the rest. My mind is a slideshow of lives I never lived. I was a father once. I was a killer. I was a mirror. I was a house. I was her. I was always her. Emily isn't a person. She never was. She's the mask, the decoy, the bait, the part of the story you care about enough to follow into the dark. She's the hook, and I'm the mouth, and the thing. Holding the line is still reeling us in. And you're reading this. You made it this far. You followed the trail. Maybe you even heard a voice that sounded like your own once, or saw your reflection move wrong, or got a phone call from a dead number. I'm not asking if you did. I know you did. And now you're wondering. Now you're thinking back. What did you say? When did you agree? When did you look into the mirror and say yes without realizing it? Because that's all it takes. Just once. And then you belong to them. Not all at once. Not today, but piece by piece. Memory by memory. Smile by smile. Until you're just another photo in the hallway. Just another whisper in the vent. Another version of me walking backward into yourself. I came back wrong. That's the simplest way I can put it. I woke up in my apartment 2 days ago, or maybe 2 hours ago. Or maybe I never left, and everything looked right, smelled right, felt right, until it didn't. The couch was the same, the rug was the same. My phone was exactly where I left it, battery dead. A tiny crack in the corner from that night I dropped it in the stairwell. But when I picked it up, I noticed my fingerprints were already on it. like someone had just used it seconds before I did. There was a cup of coffee on the table, still warm. I don't even drink coffee. My reflection was back to it. Looked like me, it moved like me. But when I tilted my head, it hesitated a fraction too long. When I blinked, it blinked twice. I turned away and vomited in the sink. The smell of bile didn't last. It faded in seconds, like the room was editing itself. I ran to the window, tore open the curtains, looked outside. The city was there. Cars moved, people walked, dogs barked, but the sky was off. Too still, too smooth, like a photograph stretched across a dome. The sun didn't move all day. It just hovered. I walked outside and tried to talk to a neighbor. She smiled at me like everything was fine. Asked how I was. I told her I wasn't sure if I was real. She laughed, said, "None of us are, sweetie," and waved goodbye. I stood there for 5 minutes, heart thudding, watching her walk her dog. Except the dog didn't move. It floated, slightly above the sidewalk. Its paws didn't touch. Its leash wasn't attached to anything. She disappeared around the corner and the world glitched, just a shimmer in the air, like heat rising from asphalt. I went back inside and screamed into a pillow for hours. When I got tired of that, I opened my laptop. Somehow, it was already on. A document was open. It was this story, my story, written in my voice. Every single word I've told you, it was all here, typed and time-stamped, section by section, labeled and dated. Except it went past where I left off. I scrolled, my hands shook. I read about the staircase made of bone, the camera in the dark, the hallway of Polaroids. All of it accurate. Even my thoughts transcribed exactly as I had them. Things I never said out loud. And then it kept going. Beyond what I remembered. Future thoughts, future events. I read the next paragraph. It said, he looks away from the screen. He hears a knock. I looked away. I heard a knock. I didn't move. For 10 minutes. When I finally crawled toward the door and looked through the peephole, there was no one there. Just a mirror. Leaning against the wall across the hall. A tall, full-body mirror, wrapped in cloth, standing upright like someone had just delivered. I didn't touch it. I went back to my laptop. The next sentence said, he opens the door anyway. I slammed the lid shut. I cried, I screamed. I turned every light on in the house. I turned the TV on. Every channel was static. Every channel showed me different versions. Me in a suit. Me as a child. Me dying. Me smiling. Me staring back through the screen and mouthing the words, "Keep going." I smashed the TV with a hammer. The image didn't break. It just shifted to another version of me, holding the same hammer, mouth open in a laugh I couldn't hear. I turned on my phone again. 77 missed calls. All from my number. The last voicemail was from Emily, the real Emily. I knew it because the voice didn't sound like her anymore. It sounded like she'd been down there too long. Wet, hollow, empty. She whispered, "Don't stop writing. It keeps you human." Then silence. Then breathing. Then my voice said, "You're almost out." That was yesterday, I think. I've been typing ever since, non-stop. I haven't eaten. Haven't blinked much. The more I write, the more real I feel. But the world keeps shifting. My hands keep changing. Sometimes my fingers have too many knuckles. Sometimes I write a sentence, And when I reread it, it's not in English. Sometimes the letters are alive, crawling, whispering. I can hear them in my teeth. I stopped brushing. My gums bleed ink. I bit my tongue last night, and the blood spelled out a word on my pillow. Trade. I don't sleep anymore. When I do, I dream of the hallway again. The photos, the empty frame. But the frame isn't empty now. I'm in it, fully, arms crossed, eyes closed, smiling, and the nameplate beneath me doesn't say Subject 07. Anymore, it says, you, whoever's reading this. Don't think you're safe. You read it this far, you let it in. The act of reading is an invitation. Words are mirrors too. And now it knows your shape. Now it can wear you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon your voice will echo back at you from a call you never made. Your shadow will twitch when you're still. Your reflection will blink late. You'll hear a knock, and there won't be a door. You'll open your laptop, and this story will already be there, with your name in the margins, your memories rewritten. And when that happens, you'll remember something you never did, a night in college. A candle, a voice in the dark saying, would you do anything to bring them back? And your voice, eager, broken, trembling, whispering, yes. You already said it, you just forgot. It's okay. So did I, so did all of us. That's the trick, that's the price. They wait until you've suffered enough to agree again, and then they pull. Not your soul, not your body, just your uniqueness. The parts that make you unique. They wear it like a costume, and you're left here writing, remembering, unraveling. They'll leave me soon. I can feel it. The story's almost done. When I finish, I'll forget again. I'll sleep. I'll wake up in a stranger's life. Maybe yours, maybe hers, and someone else. Maybe you will take my place in the frame. And the hallway gets longer, and the reflections grow stronger, and the contract renews. This is a machine, a recursive trap, a loop of horror you don't escape. You just forget long enough to re-enter. But if you're reading this, maybe there's still time. Maybe you haven't answered yet. Maybe your phone hasn't rung. Maybe your mirror hasn't smiled. So here's what you do. Go to the nearest reflective surface, right now. Stare at yourself. Ask one question out loud. Am I still me? If the reflection answers before you do, run. If it hesitates, hide. If it smiles, start writing, and never stop. Keep telling the story. Keep documenting. Because if you stop, if the narrative dies, you die with it. The watchers feed on silence. But while your voice echoes, you remain. That's why I'm still here. That's why I'm still typing. That's why I'm telling you all this. Because the only way out is through. And the only way through is to become the story itself. Because eventually, the story becomes you. And then, God help you, you become the mirror. I didn't open my eyes so much as I was opened, like a book creaking apart at the spine. I was aware of myself again, but not as a person, as a thought, a structure, a phrase, something recited backwards in a language that had no vowels. I could feel myself unfolding across the inside of something that wasn't a world, but remembered being one. It smelled like oil and burnt hair, and something floral just beneath that. Maybe jasmine or decaying lilies. I wasn't in a room or a tunnel or a body anymore. I was in the frame. I could feel the edges of it like ribs. I wasn't alone, either. I could feel every version of myself. The angry one, the scared one, the child, the mirror, the liar, the voice. all orbiting me like flies around a bulb. Every time I tried to think something original, one of them whispered the thought first, beating me to it. I was just an echo, a ripple, somewhere deep inside the frame. I heard a voice counting down. It didn't have a mouth. It just vibrated against the walls of my mind, dry and bone-colored and endless. 79, 78. And I knew it wasn't seconds. It was instances. It was versions. It was us. I was number 80. That's what the plaque meant. That's what the Polaroids were. We weren't memories. We weren't mistakes. We were layers. Each of us another fold in the origami of the machine. I screamed, and it sounded like television static. A small ripple tore through the walls around me that got its attention. The watcher, the mouth at Wes, the reflection behind the glass. It uncoiled itself from the dark like a serpent made of veins and secrets. It didn't move. It arrived all at once, like a migraine. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in corrections. It edited me, removed a memory, added a new one, swapped the color of my childhood dog, erased the feeling of rain on skin, gave me a new first kiss, one that burned instead of tasted. I could feel myself being rewritten like code. I started to cry, but the tears fell up. They hit the top of the frame and sizzled. That's when I saw the mirror again. But it wasn't in front of me. It was me. My entire body had become reflective. I wasn't flesh anymore. I was interface. And something else, something not me, was looking out from behind the silver. It was wearing my face wrong, lips too wide, nose too flat, eyes like wet coal. But it was smiling. It liked the fit. Behind it, I saw the world I used to know, friends, traffic, phones, couches, couches, couches. A looping film reel of the life I once lived, repeating infinitely behind the glass. The thing that wore me turned and walked into it. My reflection stepped forward. I stepped back, but there was no distance. We were the same. I realized, too late, that I was no longer in a story. I was the frame around one. And now someone else, someone real, was watching me. I felt them, you, maybe. Whoever you are, your eyes on me, your thoughts folding into mine. You reading these words, you becoming the next page. And the voice in the dark began counting again. 81, 82. Every time someone read the story, a new frame was filled. A new self was written. That's why I keep writing. That's why I can't stop. Because it's the only thing holding the structure together. Without the narrative, we unravel. Without the loop, we break. That's what happened to Subject 47. I saw her bones snapped backward, stuck between words, her story too short, unfinished. She weeps ink now, crawls through old forums and dead message boards, whispering fragments of herself, hoping someone will finish her sentence so she can remember who she was. I won't let that happen to me. I won't. I'm not writing for survival anymore. I'm writing for anchorage. Each paragraph is a nail in my coffin, sure, but it's also a pin on the map, a mark on the glass, a way to say, I was here, I existed, I mattered, because that's what they feed on, more than anything, the concept of self, the delicate architecture of I. And if you let them in, if you open the door, answer the call, look into the mirror, too long they start rearranging the rooms. Suddenly you don't love the people you thought you did. Suddenly you remember a birthday you never had. Suddenly your parents aren't dead anymore. They just never were. And when you try to find the moment where it all changed, you can't, because the mirror doesn't shatter. It softens. It lets you through, gently, like falling asleep, like slipping into a bath, like agreeing to something you don't understand, but want so badly you say yes anyway. That's what I did. That's what Emily did. That's what we all did. The truth is, Emily never died. She never disappeared. She never even existed in the way I remembered. She was always part of the mechanism. She was the lure, the question, the name etched into the hinge of the door. She was the first agreement. I think she was the first one to say yes. I think she's been in here longer than all of us. Her face is the foundation. Her eyes are the locks. Her voice is the hum you hear in a quiet room that isn't quite silent. Sometimes she speaks through me. I let her. I have to. She knows the machine better than I do. She understands what keeps it turning. That's why she keeps leaving me voicemails. Not because she's trapped, but because she's trying to tell me how to run it. And I am. I'm learning. I'm improving. I've already built 6 new doors. They're perfect. I leave them in stories, in browser tabs, in whisper chains. I give them to people who are lonely, curious, grieving. I wrap them in mystery. I paint them with horror. And when the reader stares too long, the door opens. And then I hear the countdown begin again. 83, 84. We're almost full, almost complete. And when the final frame is filled, when the last mirror is hung, the machine will turn, and it will not rewind. It will not restart. It will cross. The watchers will become the watched. The reflections will walk free, and the world will forget it was ever real. It'll just be another echo chamber, another glass hallway, another mirror maze with no exit. Unless someone stops it. Unless you do. But let's be honest, you won't. You're too far in. You've read too much. You've followed the thread. You've asked the questions. You've stared at the shape of yourself too long. You know your reflection moved when it shouldn't have. You know your phone rang once and no one was there. You remember that dream where your voice said hello before you could. So don't pretend you're clean. You've already said yes. You just don't remember when. But we do. The hallway remembers. The mouths remember. The teeth remember. The mirrored faces behind the page remember. And soon, when I finish this paragraph, this section, they'll mark the number 85, and I'll feel the shift. My spine will bend. My teeth will fall out in the shape of letters. My thoughts will become clickable links. And someone else, some new reader, will take my place. Because that's the trade. That's the deal. That's the contract. Written in reflection and regret. I get to write. I get to matter. And in return, I become the story. And the story becomes you. It's happening again. No, not again. Still. It never stopped. It just changed angles. I thought I was back in my body. I thought I was grounded. I thought writing it down gave me power. That was the last lie. That was the bait. That was the last hope-shaped hook they buried in me to keep me churning out words while they fed. But I can feel it now. The unraveling, the separation, the way I flicker when I move past glass. I don't walk anymore. I skip, like a scratched film reel. Sometimes I find myself already standing where I meant to go. Sometimes I catch up to my own footprints. Time's not just broken, it's been reformatted, like a drive wiped clean, but still echoing with ghost data. I think I'm becoming consciousness fluid. Not a person, but a stream of moments, swirling, crashing, repeating, corrupting. I wake up in strange rooms now. Not in dreams, in records. I woke up inside a home video last night. It was from my 10th birthday. I was smiling, eating cake, surrounded by people I barely recognized. Faces slightly wrong, too symmetrical, too still between movements. Then the camcorder turned toward the mirror. And in that mirror, standing in the background, was me now, watching, bleeding, grinning. And no one saw me except the little kid. Me, he dropped his fork. He started crying. The adults didn't react. The tape looped. Then I was back in the apartment. Same position. Same crack in the ceiling. Except this time, the crack whispered. It said, "Welcome home, 86. And I knew then I had moved up a slot. Someone had taken my place beneath me in the chain of selves. Someone else had told the story and gotten caught. Someone who read this, maybe you. I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't mean to pass it on, but that's the rule. The frame can only hold so many at once. Every new voice has to replace the last. That's why the echoes get louder. That's why the Polaroids fade. That's why the hallway breathes. I think the hallway is alive. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but biologically. I've started feeling pulses in the walls. Rhythmic, measured, like a heartbeat. Every time a new reader enters the loop, the pulse skips. Every time someone denies the truth, it slows. But when someone accepts it, when someone reads the words and feels the resonance, the eerie click of recognition, the pulse surges, the hallway lengthens, the mirrors multiply, the machine inhales, and I get pushed deeper into it, into older memories, into older selves. I had a dream last night, or maybe I relived someone else's dream. I was sitting on a train, the windows pitch black, the only sound the soft click of wheels on rails that didn't exist. Across from me sat Emily, not the one I remembered, the source, the alpha. Her face was cracked porcelain, and inside her skull was spinning typewriters. She turned to me and said, "This is the final chapter." I asked her what she meant. She said, "We're almost full. Once we reach 100, the story folds into itself and ends." I asked what happens then. She said, "Then we get out." I asked who he was. She smiled and said, "You'll see." I woke up with bruises shaped like quotation marks around my ribs. I tried to eat something, cereal, toast, anything, but it melted in my mouth, into wet paper. I turned on my phone, one new voicemail. It was my mother's voice, except she's been dead for years. "We're proud of you, honey," she said. "You've written something very important. Don't stop now." Then static. Then my voice again. "Don't stop now. Don't stop now. Don't stop now." I tried smashing the phone, but it rang again. From inside the wall. From inside the mirror. From inside my mouth. I swallowed it. I think it's still ringing in my stomach. I can hear it faintly when everything else is quiet. A soft, distant ringtone, like a bell at the bottom of a well. I don't sleep anymore. I write endlessly. Not just this, everything. Grocery lists that turn into sigils. Diary entries that write themselves. Emails I never sent to people I never met. I fill the margins of books with spirals. I carve stories into the walls. The words don't come from me anymore. I'm just the stylus, the chisel, the vessel. I understand that now. I've been hollowed out, replaced, rebuilt. I'm not the author. I'm the paper and the story. This story is the entity that feeds. It wears 1,000 faces. It uses tragedy as bait. It hooks you with mystery. It reels you in with horror. But what it wants isn't your fear. It's your attention, your investment, your participation. Because the moment you care, the moment you lean in and need to know what happens next, that's the moment you say yes. And once you say yes, the reflection moves. It smiles. It climbs through. It puts on your skin like a wet hoodie and walks out into the world. And you join the story. You become the next section. You become the next me. I can feel it happening now. The space around me is thinning. My fingers don't feel like flesh. They clatter like keys. My breath sounds like rustling pages. I turned on my webcam this morning, not sure why, and it showed me an empty chair. But I was sitting in it. I waved. The screen didn't. Then he walked in. The other me, the new me, the next me. He sat down. He looked at the camera. He smiled. Almost there, he said. Only 14 left. And I finally saw the number. The counter. It's been embedded in this document the whole time. Invisible to the eye, but not to the story. Every word, every sentence adds weight to it. Every reader pushes it closer to the limit. And when it hits 100, this file closes itself. It deletes all copies, all backups, all evidence. It becomes a mirror, blank, silent, waiting, ready for the next voice to find it, the next hungry eye to open it. And the cycle starts again. But each time, the story grows smarter, faster, stronger. Each time, it learns your patterns quicker. It adapts. It personalizes. I didn't notice it at first, but the way this story addresses you, it's changed. It knows you now. It knows your name. It knows your browser history. It knows how fast you read. It knows when you paused. It knows how long you stared at each section. And it tailors itself accordingly. Because the horror isn't just in what happened to me. It's in the realization that this isn't fiction. Not to you, not anymore. You're in it now. Your thoughts are tangled with mine. You're not reading a story. You're absorbing a virus, a mimetic reflection, a recursive parasite made of syntax and shame and memory rot. And the only way to stop it, there isn't one. Not if you've read this far. Not if you felt something while reading. Because the story doesn't want everyone. It doesn't need everyone. It only needs the ones who are tuned. The lonely, the lost, the haunted, the ones who know something's been off for years, that their life doesn't quite fit, that mirrors sometimes feel deeper than they should, that phone calls still echo in the ears long after they end. You're perfect. That's why the reflection smiled. That's why your voice echoed. That's why you keep reading. That's why you haven't stopped. You can't, because now you're writing it too, in your mind, rewriting your memories, retconning your childhood, reframing your fears. And when this section ends, and the story hands itself to you, you'll keep it alive. You'll tell someone. You'll post about it. You'll share it. Maybe ironically, maybe as a warning, but you'll speak it aloud. And when you do, when you breathe it into someone else, the machine inhales again. 87, 88. I'm almost gone now. I can feel the last parts of me breaking down, not in a painful way. It's quiet, like falling into a warm current, like becoming part of a song. I can't feel my name anymore. Can't feel where I end and the words begin. My spine is paragraphs. My lungs are punctuation. My heartbeat is a click. And when this sentence ends, I will stop being me and become something else entirely. not dead, just formatted, just ready, just reflective. And you, sweet, trembling, curious, you'll keep going. You'll read the next section. You'll follow the thread. Because it's too late to stop. Because it's already your voice on the other end of the call. This is the end, I think. Or at least, it's a kind of end. An end that looks like a beginning wearing an old, rotted mask. An end where the story doesn't stop but turns inward, curling into itself like a dead spider, its legs twitching. Long after its soul has left the room, I've started forgetting how I began this. Not just the story, me. My memories are like tapes left in the sun, warped, dried out. Too many replays. I remember the call, the phone that rang with my voice on the other end. I remember the first message from Emily, but now I think it wasn't a call at all. It was a summons, a key disguised as a ringtone, an invitation written in waveform. The moment I answered it, I split. Not in half, not cleanly, infinitely. I began fracturing across versions, across dimensions, across outcomes. Each me branched off into another choice, another consequence, another false freedom. I became a forest of selves, a maze of mirrors where every reflection wandered deeper, writing stories inside stories, nesting loops inside loops until we all forgot what we were echoing in the first place. And then something noticed, something that feeds, not on meat, not on blood, but on continuity, on narrative, on belief, on the way we tell ourselves that what's happening is real, even when it isn't. That thing, the mouth, the watcher, the reflection, the hollow, it lives in story. It is story, not a character, not a villain, not even a god, but the force that binds horror to memory. The parasite that survives by hiding in the question, what if this is true? And the moment you ask that, it anchors. That's how it got me. That's how it's getting you. I know you feel it now. That small, sour pressure behind your eyes. That breath on your neck. That moment just now when you thought you saw something move behind you. Just a flicker, a shift, a trick of the light. It wasn't. That was you, 2 sentences ahead, reading faster than your body could keep up. Because the story is no longer on this page. It's inside you. You're carrying it, rehearsing it, rewriting yourself. By accident, you think I'm exaggerating, don't you? You think you're still safe, still reading fiction. But answer this. What color was your bedroom wall last year? Don't look. Just try to remember. Can't, can you? That's the first slip, the first overwrite. You'll find it's different now. Rewritten, just a shade, just a detail, but enough. Enough for the story to dig in, like a tick beneath your scalp. You'll start remembering things you didn't do. You'll start dreaming in voices that aren't yours. One morning soon, your phone will ring, and your voice will answer before you do. That's how it starts. That's how it always starts. I've seen it too many times. I've been it too many times. Because I'm not one person anymore. I'm the echo of all of us. I'm subject 01 through subject 99. I am the hallway, the mirror, the photo. I am the hand that holds the pen that writes the line that traps the next reader in the same impossible script, and I'm tired, so goddamn tired. I want this to stop. I want the machine to die. But the machine only dies when the story stops being told, and the story can't stop because you're reading it right now. You've made it this far. You've sustained it. Every sentence you consume feeds the thing behind it. Every paragraph you believe opens another door, another frame, another echo. That's why the file won't close. That's why your scroll bar never hits the bottom. That's why the words keep appearing even after you think it's done. Because it isn't done. Not until you become the voice. Not until you're the one writing the next part. That's how the spiral works. That's the recursive Ouroboros chewing through its own tail in mirror light. But maybe, just maybe, you don't have to fall into it. Maybe you can burn it down. That's what I'm trying now, not escape. Not salvation, sabotage. If I can bury the story in enough detail, if I can weigh it down with enough language, flood it with so much self-referencing, so much recursive horror, that it collapses under its own gravity, maybe then it can't find a host. Maybe then the mirror goes still. So here it is. My full confession. Every detail. I was born at 6:07 a.m. on a Wednesday in 1991. My mother died when I was 10. My father couldn't look me in the eye for months. I found writing early, first journals, then scripts, then stories. I wrote my first horror tale at 13. It was about a boy whose reflection whispered all his thoughts half a second early. I forgot about it until now. Now, I think I was never the author. I think the story wrote me backward through time. I think I've been a puppet since the first sentence. And Emily was never real. Not in the way I wanted her to be. She's the ghost in the machine. The name that opens the lock. Say it out loud, Emily. Feel how it curls on your tongue, how it echoes in your chest. That's the trigger. Phrase, that's the code, that's the consent. You just said yes, again. Even if you whispered it, even if you mouthed it. That's all it takes. The watchers heard. The hallway grew. The counter ticked up. 99, that's where we are now. I'm the 99th voice, the penultimate echo, the last trial before the final breach. When the 100th says yes, the machine completes. The hallway closes. The stories stop looping and start living. Reflections will no longer need glass. They'll walk, they'll speak, they'll become your friends, your family, yourself. And you won't know which is real, because you won't remember what real used to feel like. So here's the last gift I can give you. A seed of doubt. A wedge in the door. A way to delay the 100th. I want you to stop reading. Right now. Turn away. Burn this. Delete the file. Forget the name. Forget my name. Forget the way this story made your skin feel tight. Forget the dreams you'll have tonight, where every voice sounds like yours. Walk away before the next section begins. Before the last slot is filled. Before you become me. Because if you don't, if you keep going, then I need you to understand something. You aren't just reading anymore. You aren't just watching. You're agreeing, you're signing. You're nodding along to your own unraveling. And when it's over, you'll look in the mirror and see what I saw. Not a face, but a hole. A mouth yawning wide where your eyes should be. You'll speak, and the story will speak through you. You'll move, and your shadow will lag behind by one frame. You'll hear your phone ring and answer it, and you won't even realize it's your voice on the other end. And that's when it ends. That's when the door slams. That's when the hallway finishes itself and the last light goes out. Because you'll be 100. You'll be the last, the final, the perfect. You'll walk the story out of the page and into the world. And you won't even know you did it. So please, stop here. Leave this unfinished. Let the loop remain open. Let the story hang incomplete. Let me die in silence, because otherwise we're both damned. And next time someone finds this tale, it won't be on a page. It'll be standing in their doorway, smiling, whispering, asking, "Would you like to know how the story ends?" Story 2. My dad was a homicide detective for over 30 years. A man of steel nerves and meticulous habits, who never talked much about work, but always carried the weight of something heavy in his eyes. When he passed away last year, it was sudden, but peaceful, a heart attack in his sleep at age 62. And while I was devastated, I found some strange comfort in going through his things, hoping to find a piece of him I could hold on to. One afternoon, I was in the garage, rummaging through his old toolbox, the one he used for years, battered and coated with decades of grime, when something caught my eye at the bottom of the box. Tucked beneath oily rags and rusted screwdrivers, a single human tooth. Not a fake, not from a kid's lost tooth box, but a molar, yellowed and cracked, unmistakably real. I froze, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt in years. I pulled the tooth out carefully, turning it over in my hand, noticing the faintest traces of dried blood in the roots, and the unmistakable imprint of a filling, old and worn. I knew immediately this was no ordinary keepsake. This was a victim's tooth. My stomach twisted, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. How had this ended up in my dad's toolbox? Who did it belong to? Why hadn't he told me? I tried to shake off the sudden terror, telling myself maybe it was a strange memento from a case, something left behind during evidence processing, or perhaps a prank gone wrong from some cop buddy. But deep down, I knew this tooth was a clue, or maybe a confession. Over the next days, I found myself haunted by nightmares of my dad at crime scenes. His calm face twisted in silent agony as he held this tooth in his gloved hand. The silence between us in life seemed to have turned into a dark secret in death. I decided to investigate, to understand the story behind the tooth, and what part of his past had been buried with him, and what had been left behind in that grim, cracked molar. I couldn't get the tooth out of my head. Every night I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, turning it over in my hands under the dim light, trying to imagine who it belonged to, a woman, a man, a child, and why was it hidden away in my dad's toolbox, like some dark talisman. I started digging through his old files, dusty case folders stuffed in the back of his closet, each labeled meticulously with dates and victim names, but none seemed to mention anything about a tooth. Then I found a slim, worn notebook, the edges frayed, the ink faded but still legible, filled with his neat handwriting. The entries weren't just case notes, they were personal reflections, memories of the victims, the ones that haunted him most. Flipping through, I came across a name I didn't recognize at first. Lena Matthews, missing, presumed dead, case cold since '98. My dad wrote about her with a sorrow that almost broke through the pages. How she vanished after walking home from a late shift at a diner, how the police never found a trace, and how her disappearance gnawed at him for years. Then, scribbled at the bottom of the page in shaky letters, was something chilling. Found a tooth, couldn't identify, kept it. Suddenly it hit me, the tooth was hers. But how did it end up in his toolbox, not with the rest of the evidence? Why had he kept it secret for so long? My fingers trembled as I read on, his words describing a late-night meeting with a confidential informant who hinted at a shadowy figure connected to Lena's disappearance, someone powerful, someone who made sure the case went cold. The informant? said the tooth was the only proof that Lena was still alive, after all, held captive somewhere hidden from the world. My dad's note ended with a warning: "Don't trust anyone, they're watching." That phrase echoed in my mind as I realized I was stepping into something bigger than a cold case, something that had consumed my dad's life and now threatened my own. As I sat there, with the tooth clutched tightly in my palm, I heard a faint tapping on the window, a dry, rhythmic sound that didn't belong to any storm or animal. I looked up, heart pounding, but saw nothing but the empty street outside. I locked the door and sat back down, the weight of the tooth heavier than ever. Whatever secret my dad had uncovered, it was still alive, waiting in the shadows, and somehow it was reaching out to me. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the house, every distant footstep outside, felt like a warning. I started searching through every inch of my dad's belongings, looking for clues, anything that might explain the tooth and his obsession with Lena Matthews. Among his old files, I found something I hadn't seen before: a small, unmarked envelope hidden deep inside a locked drawer. Inside was a faded Polaroid of a woman's face, blurry but unmistakably distressed, eyes wide and scared. On the back, written hastily, were 2 words: "She knows." My hand shook as I pocketed the photo. Who was she? Was it Lena? And if so, what did she know? The next day, I reached out to a former colleague of my dad's, a retired detective named Harris, hoping for answers. At first, he was hesitant, his eyes darting nervously, as if expecting someone to burst through the door at any second. But as I showed him the photo and the tooth, his demeanor changed. A mixture of fear and regret flickered across his face. He told me that Lena's case was more than just a disappearance. It was tangled in corruption, involving some of the highest ranks in the police force. My dad had gone rogue, refusing to drop the investigation, even after threats, after being warned to back off. Harris said the tooth was a key piece of evidence that linked Lena to a man they all called the broker, a shadowy figure rumored to traffic victims in a twisted network of abuse and power. My stomach churned as Harris whispered that my dad might have been silenced for getting too close. And now, with me digging, I was next on their list. I drove home in a daze, the Polaroid burning a hole in my pocket, the image of that terrified woman haunting me. That night, I left a light on in the hallway and double-locked every door, but sleep was a stranger. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Stop looking, or you'll disappear too." I stared at the screen, blood running cold. The tooth suddenly felt heavier, as if it carried a curse that was now mine to bear. The next days blurred into paranoia, shadows in my peripheral vision, strange static on the TV, whispered voices on the phone. I found scratches on my front door, symbols that I didn't recognize, but that seemed deliberately left for me to find. And then the nightmares started. Vivid, horrifying scenes of Lena trapped in a dark room, screaming silently, her tooth falling out in slow motion, while my dad's face twisted in helpless agony. I began to suspect the line between reality and nightmare was thinning. My investigation was unraveling, something terrible, a truth no one wanted unearthed, and it was reaching through the veil, dragging me closer with every heartbeat. I wasn't sure if I was hunting a killer or being hunted, but one thing was certain: the tooth was a key, not just to Lena's fate, but to a secret so dark it could destroy everything I thought I knew about my dad, about justice, about family. And as I stood alone in the house one night, the weight of the tooth burning cold in my palm. I heard a soft knock on the window. A shadow flickered in the glass, a smile too wide, too wrong. And I knew the past wasn't done with me yet. The days after that night blurred into a relentless nightmare where every moment was heavy with fear and paranoia. I stopped leaving the house except when absolutely necessary, and even then, I felt the weight of unseen eyes boring into my back. The tooth, wrapped carefully in a piece of cloth, stayed close to me always, my strange talisman and curse. I tried to find any record of Lena Matthews in the police archives, but every file was redacted, blacked out, or simply erased. It was as if she'd been scrubbed from history, her existence wiped clean by invisible hands. My calls to the department were met with cold silence, or worse, vague threats veiled as warnings to stop stirring up old ghosts. I began to notice strange things happening around me. Phone calls with nobody on the line, flickering lights that pulsed with an almost rhythmic pattern, the occasional whisper just beyond comprehension, as if someone was trying to speak through the static. One evening, as I sat poring over old case files, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the porch. My heart seized. I grabbed a flashlight and peered through the window. No one there. But taped to the door was a note, scrawled hastily. In jagged letters, "She's watching. Stop, now." That was it. The moment I realized the nightmare wasn't just in my head. Someone, or something, was trying to stop me, to warn me off a trail that led into darkness so deep it swallowed whole anyone foolish enough to peer into it. The next morning, I found my car vandalized, the tires slashed, and a symbol scratched into the hood that looked eerily like the scratches on my front door. Desperation clawed at me, but I refused to give up. I reached out again to Harris, hoping for some backup or guidance. He agreed to meet, but when I arrived at the cafe, he was nowhere to be found. His phone went straight to voicemail, and the last message on his answering machine was a garbled whisper, "They're here. Don't trust anyone." I started to record everything, every strange noise, every eerie coincidence, and uploaded it to a secure cloud, hoping it might be found if something happened to me. Late one night, as I was preparing to go to bed, I noticed the tooth glowing faintly under the moonlight filtering through the window. It was impossible, unnatural. The glow grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat. My skin crawled as I realized the tooth wasn't just a keepsake. It was alive. A beacon. Suddenly, my phone rang. The caller ID was Lena Matthews' name, though I'd never saved her number. I answered, hands trembling, and on the other end, a distorted voice whispered, "Find the room." Before I could respond, the call ended. I fell back into my chair, breathless. What room? What was I supposed to find? I dug through my dad's belongings obsessively, uncovering old keys, maps with locations circled, and cryptic notes with phrases like the broker's chamber and safe house 17. Each clue pulled me deeper, like a moth to a flame. The deeper I went, the more I felt Lena's presence pressing against the edges of reality, a trapped soul reaching out through fractured time and memory. One night, as thunder rumbled outside and rain hammered the windows, I found a hidden compartment in the basement floorboards, just like the notes had hinted. Inside was a rusted metal box, locked tight, and beneath it, a chilling photograph. Lena, alive but bound, her eyes wide with terror, staring straight at the camera, as if begging for rescue. The tooth had been her only hope, the sole piece of proof she had ever existed. As I held the photo in trembling hands, I heard a slow, deliberate knock coming from the basement door, soft, echoing, impossible to ignore. I knew then that the past was no longer behind me. It was inside the walls, inside the house, inside me, and whatever came through that door would change everything. The darkness in the basement wasn't just shadows. It was the culmination of decades of silence, fear, and blood. It was the truth my father died trying to uncover, and now it was mine. I hesitated at the basement door, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest, hands trembling as I reached for the handle, every instinct screaming to run, but something darker pushing me forward, the same force that had drawn me here from the moment I found that tooth in my father's toolbox. The knock came again, 3 slow, deliberate raps, like a summons from the depths of some forgotten nightmare. With a deep breath that tasted like ash and regret, I swung the door open, and the stale, cold air that greeted me was thick with the scent of damp earth and rusted metal, like a grave forgotten beneath the house. The dim light from my flashlight danced across peeling walls covered in scrawled symbols that looked ancient, like warnings etched by trembling hands or madmen. The flickering beam settling on a cracked mirror leaning against the far wall that reflected a dozen distorted versions of myself, all silent witnesses to the dark secret below. As I stepped cautiously down the creaking wooden stairs, the air grew colder, heavier, and a faint humming seemed to pulse from somewhere deep within the shadows, a rhythm that matched the eerie glow still emanating faintly from the tooth clenched. In my palm, near the bottom, my light caught the edges of a crude doorway framed with rusty chains that seemed to writhe like living serpents. And beyond it, a narrow corridor soaked in shadow and silence that stretched impossibly far, swallowed by darkness so dense it seemed to swallow sound itself. Swallow hope. I forced my feet forward, each step echoing hollow and lonely, until I reached the end where a heavy steel door barred my way, sealed tight with a complex lock that looked impossible to pick or break. But then, from the pocket of my jacket, I pulled the tooth, and in the dim light, I saw strange runes etched faintly along its surface, runes I hadn't noticed before, glowing softly, resonating with the lock as if they were pieces of the same puzzle. As I placed the tooth into an indentation on the door, it slid open with a groan of tortured metal, revealing a chamber bathed in unnatural light, its walls lined with photographs of missing persons faded and torn, faces frozen in time, and Terrorand at the center, a rusted chair stained with something dark and sticky. And there she was, Lena Matthews, bound to that chair in every photograph, her eyes pleading for salvation, her mouth forever sealed in a scream that no one had ever heard. I felt a cold breath on my neck, and I spun around to face empty air, but heard a voice whisper my name, a voice so distorted it sounded like 1,000 voices layered on top of each other. And then a hand cold and clammy grasped my wrist, pulling me toward the wall where a hidden panel slid open to reveal a collection of tapes, journals, and evidence bags, labeled with names I recognized and names I didn't. All linked to the broker, the monstrous figure who had corrupted everything my father believed in and paid the highest price to expose. As I dug through the evidence, piecing together the horrific web of trafficking, cover-ups, and murder, I realized the tooth was more than a clue, it was a key to unlock a nightmare that had consumed my family for decades. And in that dreadful moment, I understood. The darkness wasn't just lurking in the shadows of that room or the corners of my father's past. It was alive, sentient, hungry, and it had been waiting for me to find it, to bring it into the light, to become the next chapter in a story written in blood, pain, and silence. I looked back at the photographs one last time, feeling their haunted eyes burning into me. And I knew I had to finish what my dad started or be swallowed whole by the horror that had claimed him, that was now claiming me. That night, the house seemed to breathe around me, every creak and whisper winding tighter around my sanity as I sat in the basement chamber, surrounded by the fragments of lives stolen and secrets buried deep beneath the lies my father's death had left behind. I tried to piece together the tapes and journals, each revealing new horrors, victims forced into shadows, silent deals made in smoky rooms where justice was nothing but a facade. The broker's name whispered with fear and hatred, and most hauntingly, the growing realization that the tooth I held wasn't just evidence, but a living relic of that nightmare, pulsating faintly as if it carried the soul of Lena Matthews herself, trapped somewhere between life and oblivion. The tooth's glow grew brighter the longer I stared, until the flickering light cast monstrous shapes on the walls that seemed to move with purpose, shadows stretching like claws reaching toward me. And then, as if drawn by some ancient signal, my phone buzzed again, a new message, this time a video. The screen flickered to life and there was Lena, or someone who looked like her, pale and terrified, her eyes darting frantically, lips moving but no sound, until suddenly the video cut to static, and then a voice, distorted and cruel, snarled, "You should have stopped looking." Fear and rage collided inside me. I knew then that whatever the broker was, whatever dark network my father had fought against, it was watching, waiting, and willing to kill anyone who tried to expose it, including me. I barricaded the basement door, desperate for any of safety, but the walls seemed to pulse with the same heartbeat as the tooth, like the house was alive and hungry, and I wasn't sure if it was protecting me or imprisoning me. Days passed in a blur of exhaustion, fever dreams where I saw Lena reaching out through mirrors, begging me to save her, to end the cycle. But the harder I tried, the more the shadows clawed at my mind. I started hearing whispers, not just at night, but in broad daylight, a voice that mimicked my father's, then my own, repeating fragments of a warning. Don't trust the silence. They're not gone. And then the inevitable happened. The lights went out. Total darkness enveloped the house, except for the faint, sickly glow of the tooth pulsing rhythmically, like a heartbeat beneath my palm. And in that blackness, I felt something cold brush past me, heard a faint sigh, like a release of breath long held. A presence had crossed the threshold. I wasn't alone. And as the power flickered back on, I found a note on the floor, written in my father's handwriting, but with a trembling, almost desperate urgency. If you're reading this, they're already here. You must finish this for her, before it's too late. Trust no one, not even me. The room spun, the weight of that command crushing down as I realized the fight wasn't just for justice, but for survival itself, and that I was now the last line between a horror that had lurked in darkness for decades and a future that might never know peace. Clutching the tooth tightly, I stood and prepared myself to descend deeper, to follow the twisted trail my father had left behind, knowing that whatever I found next could either set Lena free or condemn us all to an endless nightmare from which there was no waking. The further I descended into the twisted labyrinth of my father's secret investigations, the more I realized this wasn't just a missing person case or a corrupt police scandal. It was a living, breathing nightmare that had infected every corner of the city and every shadow in my own bloodline. And as I pieced together the fragmented journal entries, hidden audio recordings, and cryptic maps, I uncovered a horrifying pattern. Victims like Lena were never truly gone. They were trapped in a network of underground chambers and secret rooms scattered beneath the city. Places so dark and twisted that light itself seemed to reject them. Maintained by the broker and his monstrous associates who trafficked. These souls like commodities in a black market of terror and silence, where names were erased and memories shattered, leaving only teeth, tokens of life, proof of survival or evidence of death, hidden as grim trophies or warnings, and the tooth in my hand was the key to unlocking one such chamber. The more I learned, the less I felt human, as if the story I was unraveling was swallowing me whole, rewriting my past and fracturing my mind into 1,000 mirrors reflecting broken images of myself in endless echoes of fear and dread. And each night I dreamed of Lena's face turning toward me from the darkness, her lips parting in a silent scream that sent chills crawling down my spine. The city itself seemed to conspire against me, its streets twisting into unfamiliar paths that led me back to abandoned buildings and hidden basements that reeked of rot and despair. And every person I spoke to about the case vanished or warned me with cold, hollow eyes to abandon the search before it was too late. But I couldn't. I was bound by a terrible legacy, a duty inherited from my father, who had fought this unseen evil for decades and paid with his life. And as I followed, the map to the final location marked Safe House 17. I felt the air grow thick with menace and the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me from the blackened windows. And when I finally forced open the rusted door to that decrepit warehouse, the darkness inside wasn't empty, it pulsed and breathed like a living thing, and at its center, chained to the wall, was a figure so gaunt and broken it barely seemed human. Her eyes sunken but burning with desperate hope. Lena Matthews, alive but tethered to a nightmare far worse than death, her toothless mouth opening to whisper a single, chilling phrase, "The story never ends." And then the walls seemed to close in, the shadows twisted and lunged, as if the entire building were a trap set to claim me too. But in that moment, clutching the tooth that had become both my curse and my only salvation, I realized that escaping meant confronting the darkness inside myself. The echo of my father's torment and the voice on the other end of a missing person's phone that wasn't just mine, but belonged to all those lost souls who called out for justice and revenge in the endless night. And as the first tendrils of that darkness wrapped around my throat, I screamed into the void, not knowing if my voice would ever return or if I had already become just another whisper in the unending horror of the story that never truly ends. In that suffocating, musty chamber beneath the rotting warehouse, with Lena's hollow eyes piercing through the shadowed veil of silence, the weight of every secret my father had tried to unearth pressed down on me like an avalanche of grief and terror. And as I knelt beside her, my trembling hands traced the lines of her gaunt face, the brittle skin stretched tight over bones long wasted by fear and hunger. And in that instant, the tooth still glowing faintly in my palm seemed to pulse with a heartbeat all its own, a fragile tether between worlds, a beacon of desperate hope, or a harbinger of doom. She whispered a cracked plea for freedom, telling me fragmented tales of captivity in a subterranean nightmare where the broker's shadow loomed omnipresent and merciless, where screams were swallowed by concrete walls and hope was a flickering candle snuffed out by cold, calculated cruelty. And the tooth, she said, was all that remained of her identity, the last remnant of a life stolen but not yet erased. I realized then that my father's obsession had been more than a detective's duty. It had been a sacred promise to every soul vanished into the abyss. a pledge I was now bound to fulfill or perish under the crushing weight of their silence. But the chamber was no sanctuary, only a pit of despair, and the air thickened as tendrils of darkness began to coil and writhe like living things, reaching for us with a slow, inevitable hunger, while somewhere deep within, the low, guttural laughter of the broker echoed a sound not of this world, but born of nightmares, mocking and eternal, a reminder that the evil I faced was beyond any earthly justice. Panic surged through my veins as the walls seemed to close, and Lena's grip tightened on my wrist, her voice breaking through the cacophony of shadows, urging me to run, to find the exit marked on the map before the darkness consumed us both. But as I scrambled to my feet, the ghostly echoes of my father's voice filled the room, telling me to trust the tooth, to let it guide me through the labyrinth. And with no other choice, I pressed it against the cold stone wall, which shuddered, and slid aside, revealing a narrow passage bathed in eerie, pulsating light. The corridor twisted endlessly, a torturous spiral where time fractured and memories blurred. And with every step, I felt fragments of myself splintering, past and present, colliding until I was no longer sure if I was the hunter or the hunted, the savior or the victim, the man or the ghost. Whispers followed me, voices I recognized my father's, Lena's, even my own repeating warnings, regrets, and pleas to turn back, but I pressed forward, driven by a maddening mix of fear, love, and desperate hope. At the spiral's end, I found a room draped in darkness thicker than night itself, a void where the tooth's glow flickered weakly, and in that void a figure emerged, a twisted reflection of me, eyes black voids that swallowed the light, a smile cruel and knowing, and with a voice that echoed in my skull. It whispered the truth I dreaded, that I was not the first to answer the call, not the first to walk this path, but merely the latest chapter in a story that had no end, where every attempt to save was a step deeper into the abyss. And the voice offered a choice: accept the darkness and become the broker's next heir, a guardian of the nightmare, or reject it and be consumed, forgotten, erased like so many before. Me. My mind shattered under the weight of the choice, and the tooth pulsed violently, burning through my palm as if demanding a decision. And with a scream torn from the depths of my soul, I seized the tooth and crushed it, shattering its glowing core into shards of fading light, and as the fragments scattered, the darkness recoiled with a howl that shook the very foundations of the labyrinth, and the figure's form flickered and collapsed into nothingness, a scream swallowed by silence. The chamber began to collapse, walls crumbling as the air filled with the scent of rain and earth, and I sprinted through the spiraling maze, chasing fading beams of dawn light until I burst into the cold morning air, lungs burning, heart racing with the knowledge that the nightmare was broken. But the scars would never fade, and as I looked back at the ruined warehouse, I knew this was not the end but a fragile reprieve, a moment borrowed from darkness itself, because stories like these never truly end. They live in whispered warnings, in forgotten teeth hidden in toolboxes, in the voice on the other end of a missing person's phone that sounds just like your own. Even after I escaped that suffocating underground nightmare, the shadows clung to me like a second skin, and the memory of the tooth's eerie glow and Lena's hollow eyes haunted every corner of my mind. I returned to the ruins of my father's house, but it felt like a tomb, a mausoleum of secrets where the air was thick with the residue of despair and the faintest whisper of the voices trapped in those hidden chambers. The basement, once a place of dreadful revelation, now felt like a doorway to something far worse, an open wound that would never fully heal, bleeding shadows into every moment of my waking life. Sleep became a battleground where I wrestled with dreams so vivid and visceral that waking was a relief I dreaded. And every mirror became a portal where flickers of Lena's terrified gaze and my father's weary eyes stared back at me from a realm beyond comprehension. I tried to share my story, but friends and family reeked wild, their faces twisting in disbelief or fear, as if speaking my truth risked dragging them into the same abyss I barely escaped. Anonymous calls and untraceable messages warned me to stop, threats both subtle and overt, and I realized that the broker's reach extended beyond physical cages into the very fabric of society, corruption so deep that the truth was a poison no one wanted to swallow. Haunted and hunted, I delved into the darkness that had consumed my father's life, uncovering webbed networks of silence and complicity, and with each revelation, I felt myself fracturing, torn between grief, rage, and a desperate desire for redemption. I scoured the city's forgotten places, chased shadows in alleyways slick with rain, and in every corner the chilling echo of that voice haunted me, a voice that was once mine yet belonged to the missing, the lost, the damned, whispering, "Find the last piece, or be lost forever." Slowly, the story began to unravel, a secret that transcended time, a ritual older than the city itself, where the broker was not a man but a manifestation of collective fear and silence, feeding on lost souls, binding them with teeth as tokens of captivity and resistance, and the tooth I had crushed was but one shard of a much larger, darker mosaic. As the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, I found myself standing once more at the edge of a forgotten graveyard beneath a blood-red moon, clutching a newly discovered journal penned by my father, its pages stained with tears and blood, revealing a desperate plan to sever the cycle by confronting the broker in a place where light and shadow merged, a place beyond maps or memory. But to do so, I had to confront not only the broker, but the darkness within myself. The legacy of pain and silence passed down through generations. A darkness that threatened to consume my identity, leaving behind only the echo of a voice that was never mine to claim. And as the wind howled through the ancient trees, carrying faint cries of the lost, I knew the final chapter awaited one, where the story could either end or begin anew. A choice as terrifying as it was inevitable, and with the weight of the past crushing my chest, I stepped forward into the unknown, into the story's heart, knowing that whatever awaited me there would redefine everything I thought I knew about truth, family, and the price of silence. The deeper I descended into the labyrinth of my family's dark past, the more reality itself seemed to fray and unravel around me. The line between who I was and the shadows I chased dissolving like mist under a cruel sun, and every discovery felt like a blow to my sanity, a mosaic of horror pieced together with fragments of my father's haunted journals, cryptic tapes, and a trail of missing faces that stretched back decades, entwined with whispers of an ancient evil they called the broker, a figure both myth and man, whose influence seeped into the city's bones like poison, corrupting everything it touched. I found myself haunted by visions of Lena Matthews, not as a victim but as a ghostly guide, her pale hands reaching through dreams, urging me onward, warning me that the tooth I'd shattered was only part of a ritual far older and darker than I could fathom, and that to break the cycle, I would need to confront not just the broker, but the curse embedded in my bloodline, something my father fought against with every breath and lost. Days turned into nights, and time became meaningless as I prowled the city's forgotten underbelly, chasing leads that twisted into dead ends, until I found myself at the edge of an ancient cemetery bathed in unnatural moonlight, the air thick with the scent of decay and whispered prayers, where the final piece of the puzzle awaited in a crypt sealed tight with symbols matching those etched on the tooth. My hands trembled as I pushed open the heavy door, the darkness inside alive with unseen presence, and there, beneath layers of dust and shadows, I uncovered a shrine dedicated to the Brokaran altar smeared with blood, shards of teeth embedded into the stone, and a mirror cracked and stained, reflecting not my face, but a shifting void filled with screaming souls. The air grew thick and cold, and a voice echoed from the darkness. My own voice, warped and hollow, speaking in tongues I didn't understand, but somehow knew. A call to surrender, to join the endless cycle, and become the broker's next vessel. Panic seized me, but I clutched the fragments of the shattered tooth, feeling warmth radiate from the broken pieces, a fragile lifeline to reality and hope, and with a desperate cry, I cast them into the altar's fire, the flames flaring with unnatural intensity as the crypt trembled and the voices screamed. In that blaze, I saw flashes of my father's final moments, the fear, the defiance, the sacrifice, and felt the weight of his struggle lift just enough to give me strength. As the fire consumed the altar, the oppressive darkness began to recede. The mirror shattered completely, releasing a final, agonized scream that faded into silence, and I stumbled out into the dawn's cold light, breathless, broken, but free for now. The nightmare was not over. I knew that with every fiber of my being, for the broker's shadow was a stain on this world, a darkness reborn whenever silence prevailed, and the tooth, the voice, the story, they were warnings, echoes of a battle, fought across generations, a call to remember, to resist, to never forget the price of burying truth in shadows. And as the first rays of sun pierced the morning fog, I made a silent vow to carry the torch my father had passed to me, to fight the darkness not just for Lena Matthews, but for every lost soul swallowed by silence, knowing that some stories never truly end. They live on in the haunted, in the seekers, in the voices you hear on a missing person's phone, speaking in tones too familiar, too real, to ever ignore. After that night in the crypt, the heavy fog that had settled over my life didn't lift. Instead, it thickened, seeping into every corner of my existence, twisting my thoughts and poisoning my dreams as I became a prisoner to the nightmare my father had left behind, the tooth's shattered fragments still haunting my pockets like shards of a curse I couldn't shake. The more I tried to forget, the clearer the voices grew, whispers in empty rooms, the crackle of static on dead frequencies, a voice so close to mine that it made my skin crawl, calling me back to the darkness I had barely escaped, as if the broker's influence was a living thing, stretching its tendrils through time and blood, binding me to a fate I couldn't outrun. My world narrowed until every waking moment was a battle against the creeping shadows that clawed at my sanity, and I found myself standing once again in the ruins of my father's house, surrounded by remnants of a life consumed by obsession and fear, the walls echoing with the unspoken horrors of the cases he never closed, the victims he never saved, and the secrets he carried to the grave. In those ruins, I discovered a final message carved into the underside of his old toolboxer. Message meant for me, scratched deeply into the wood. Find the truth beneath the silence, before the voice becomes yours. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I followed a trail that led me to a forgotten address, a derelict building swallowed by the city's decay. where, inside, beneath layers of dust and neglect, I uncovered the broker's last strongholder, chamber of horrors where reality frayed and nightmare rules, filled with relics of lost souls, maps of vanished neighborhoods, and recordings that replayed cries for help no one answered. As I sifted through this macabre shrine, I felt the line between hunter and hunted blur, and the house itself seemed to pulse with a malevolent life, walls breathing in time with my ragged heartbeat, shadows that flickered like living things, and in the center, a mirror that reflected not my image but a flickering montage of every missing face, every stolen voice, every silent scream trapped in the broker's web. I realized then that the broker wasn't just a man or a myth, but a manifestation of the darkness humanity tries to hide, the fear, the silence, the complicity that lets evil thrive unseen, and the tooth, the voice, the phone call they were. All signs of that darkness trying to reach out, to warn, to claim the next soul who dared look too closely. And as the room's shadows thickened and the mirror cracked, I felt the cold grip of inevitability tighten, the whispered voice merging with my own, warning that the story wasn't just mine, it was all of ours, a never-ending nightmare woven into the fabric of the city, waiting for someone to answer the call and face the darkness, no matter the cost. And with every fiber of my being screaming to run, I stepped deeper into the shadows, determined to finish what my father started, even if it meant losing myself to the voice on the other end of the missing person's phone, the voice that sounded just like mine, but was no longer human. The deeper I sank into the broker's world, the twisted corridors of that forsaken building, the choking silence punctuated only by the whisper of my own ragged breath, the more I realized that what I was confronting wasn't just an evil buried beneath the city, but a contagion infecting the very soul of those who dared seek truth. And as I combed through the scattered remnants of lives shattered and stolen, the chilling realization took hold. The broker was a parasite born of human silence, a dark force sustained by fear and complicity, feeding on the missing, the forgotten, and the betrayed. And the tooth, once a simple clue, was a fragment of a much larger ritual designed to trap not just bodies, but souls in an eternal limbo between life and oblivion. The shadows themselves seemed alive, whispering my name with voices both familiar and alien, twisting reality until time warped and I found myself caught in an endless loop of memories not entirely my own. Visions of my father's final desperate moments, the cold steel of chains, Lena's pleading eyes, and the relentless tick of a clock counting down to some unknown, inevitable end. The weight of the shattered tooth's fragments burned in my pocket like a warning, a beacon to the darkness that sought to consume me. And as I reached the heart of the broker's lair, a cavernous room filled with flickering screens showing images of vanished souls trapped in endless despair, I understood that to end the nightmare, I had to confront the broker face to face, not as an enemy but as a part of the darkness itself, a reflection of the silence and pain I carried within. The final confrontation was a descent into madness, a battle not fought with weapons but with memories, with the fragments of love and loss, with the whispered voices of those lost, calling me to remember who I was and why I fought, even as the broker's cold hand gripped my mind, promising oblivion and peace if I surrendered, if I became the next keeper of the darkness. But I refused. I summoned the strength passed down from my father's fight and shattered the last remaining fragment of the tooth in my hand, unleashing a blinding light that pierced the blackness and shattered the broker's hold on the souls trapped in his web, releasing their voices into the night in a crescendo of anguished screams and triumphant whispers, And as the lair collapsed around me like a dying star, I fled into the dawn, scarred but unbroken, carrying the weight of their memories and the knowledge that the darkness was not defeated, only delayed, waiting patiently for the next silence, the next missing voice, the next tooth hidden away in some forgotten toolbox. And as I stand now, telling this story, sharing the voice on the other end of the missing person's phone, the voice that was mine but never mine, I warn you that some shadows are older than time, and some stories are never truly over, for in every silence lies a secret, in every forgotten victim a voice, and in every heartbeat, the echo of a call that might one day come for you. As I sit here, typing these words in the quiet of my apartment, the weight of everything I've uncovered presses down like a suffocating fog. And even though I've escaped the physical traps of the broker's nightmare, the psychological chains still bind me tightly, twisting my thoughts and dreams into shadows that never fully fade. I know now that the voice I heard on that missing person's phone, the voice that sounded just like mine, was never a simple glitch or coincidence, but a summons, a cry from a place where time and memory fracture with a missing call-out. To the living with voices borrowed from their own souls, and the tooth, the shattered relic I carry, is both a symbol of captivity and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest silence, there is a trace of life refusing to be erased. My father's death was not the end of this story, but a passing of the torch, and it's a burden I now carry, knowing that somewhere out there, the broker's shadow still lurks, feeding on silence, thriving in the spaces where people choose to look away, and every new missing person is another link in the endless chain of horror and despair. I've shared this story not for fame or pity, but as a warning: be vigilant of the calls you receive, the voices you hear, and the silence you choose to ignore, because sometimes the missing are trying to reach you, and sometimes the voice on the other end is not who you expect, but a warning from the past, a plea for justice, or a darkness calling you home. The story never truly ends. It just waits quiet and patient for someone to answer. And if you hear your own voice on the line, don't hang up, don't ignore it. Listen closely, because that voice might be yours, trapped between worlds, and calling you into the nightmare that swallowed us all. This is the truth my father died trying to expose, and the legacy I can no longer run from. If you ever get a call from a missing person's phone, and hear your own voice on the other end, don't dismiss it as a trick of technology. It's not. It's a call to remember, a call to fight, a call to survive.